I'm Madison Clark, 33, Charleston, South Carolina, the city where Spanish moss drapes like secrets and the air smells faintly of salt and sugar. I build parties for a living, dreams on a timeline, emotions on a floor plan, and for years I tried to build something else too, a version of my family where I wasn't a footnote, where my sister Lauren, the perennial homecoming queen, and my brother Ryan, the charming disaster, would say my name without a smirk, where my mother Elaine would look at me and see a woman not a problem, where my father Mark would pause before he delivered the same tired shrug that says everything and nothing, you know the one, the shrug that says, don't make a fuss, let it go, be smaller, and yet I couldn't, not after surviving all those dinners where Lauren's redecorating plans were headline news and Ryan's latest do-over drew applause, while my wins, my contracts, my staff, my payroll, were treated like I'd learned a new trick, good girl, sit, stay. Smile, and I did, until I didn't, until Savannah. The invitation list was curated like a museum show, my vendors were the best in 3 states, a 5-course dinner, a swinging quartet, a lemon cream cake with the kind of gloss that photographs like glass, and tucked in my bag, a leather folder that felt heavier than it should, not from paper, but meaning, 10% of Southern Grace Events, my company, to my parents, worth $2.5 million. Plus trusts for Lauren's girls, $50,000 apiece, not charity, not hush money, a steak, a bridge, a way to say, I see you, will you finally see me, and I pictured it all night long while the staff set lights and polished stemware, while I checked the seating chart for the 60th time, while my phone buzzed with Lauren's last-minute critiques, too much jazz, too many flowers, try not to be extra, Maddie, and there it was again, the nickname I never liked, the tone that made it a leash. The mansion breathed old stories, high ceilings and heavier doors, and when guests arrived the room glittered, my mother wore pale blue and looked 10 years younger, my father straightened his tie and looked like a man who'd never worried a day in his life, and for a fragile hour, it worked, the toasts were warm, the oysters perfect, the saxophone soft as velvet, and then Lauren stood up, banging a spoon to a glass, shushing the room with 2 fingers and a smile you'd call radiant until it cut. We made something fun, she said, a family bit, don't be so serious, and she started passing shirts, one for each of us, best mom ever, king of the castle, favorite son, family rock, laughter rising like champagne, then mine landed with a slap, and I already knew, I felt the target before I saw the letters, biggest disgrace to this family, black ink, block font, a punchline that wasn't a joke. The laughter stretched, thinned, turned mean at the edges, my mother's hand to her mouth, my father's shrug, Ryan's grin reaching for the ceiling, my aunt's little clap that sounded like permission, and in the space where my heart should have cracked, something steadied, the kind of quiet you get right before a hurricane makes landfall. I folded the shirt, I placed it by the china, I reached into my bag, and their eyes followed like fish, the leather, the papers, the embossed letterhead, and I let them see, let the possibility bloom, then I took it away, strip by strip, page by page, the room going from bright to brittle to breathless, and when it was snowing shredded equity on the tablecloth, I finally spoke, if I'm a disgrace, then do it without me, and I walked for the heavy doors, their weight in my hands, the creak like a verdict, the night like a baptism, cold and clean, and behind me, silence, then chaos, then nothing, and that's where the Real story begins. By morning my phone looked like an alarm panel, missed calls stacked like bets I refused to place, texts from Lauren, drama queen, pathetic, my mother, what were those papers, my father, you went too far, Ryan, be normal for once, and I didn't answer, not because I couldn't, but because I finally could, because the equation had flipped, not them and my longing, but me and my boundaries, and still, I knew they'd learn the numbers. Someone always does, a guest, a lawyer's fragment of letterhead, a whispered calculation over coffee, and they did, fast, 2.5 million in shares gone to confetti, college funds turned to dust, and what stunned them most wasn't the money lost, it was the power, the realization that I'd been the quiet scaffolding under their every shiny moment, the invisible net, the yes beneath their no. The counterattack came right on cue. Lauren took it public, a post with a carefully sad selfie and a caption that tasted like arsenic and sugar, my sister ruined mom's night, destroyed important documents in a tantrum, pray for our family. Comments poured in from her friends who collect crisis like handbags, ungrateful, selfish, jealous, and my mother, who hates the internet except when it loves her, told the book club I had a breakdown. My father added that I've always been difficult, artistic types, you know, and Ryan texted again, investor spooked, you're hurting all of us, fix it, and still, there was that quiet inside me, not numb, not cold, just clear, the way the tide looks when you're far from shore, you can see every contour of the sand. What none of them expected, what maybe even I didn't, was the timing. A business magazine piece that had been in the works for months dropped 2 days later, a profile that read like a map of every mile I'd walked barefoot, internships, all-nighters, the year I mortgaged my little starter condo to make payroll, the client I won on a handshake and a promise when I had nothing else, and tucked inside, without fanfare or pity, were the numbers my family never wanted to add, hospital bills paid, mortgages bridged, braces, cars, tuition deposits, the slow drip of my yes over 10 long years, quiet philanthropy, they called it, I just called it love that kept not being returned. The internet is fickle, but sometimes it has a spine. The article ricocheted, my inbox filled with strangers who spoke to me like they knew the rooms I'd sat in, the rooms of almost and not quite and never enough. They wrote, you made me brave. They wrote, I cut off my sister last year and I can breathe again. They wrote, I'm starting a business because of you. And the hashtag machine turned, not rabid, but firm, a chorus more than a mob. And for the first time, my story didn't feel like a wound, it felt like a window. The consequences arrived like weather, slowly then all at once. An influencer brand quietly dropped Lauren, the email leaked, values misalignment, an angel investor who'd humored Ryan stopped returning calls, a banker told my parents the refinance wasn't going to happen, too much instability. And yet, none of that was the point, not the downfall, not the schadenfreude, the point was the silence on my end, the refusal to be drafted back into a play I didn't audition for, and that's when the past knocked, not with an apology, but with a revelation. Aunt Claire at my office door, eyes watery, hands twisting a tissue. I didn't know, she said, and then she told me something I should have known and didn't. The t-shirt stunt wasn't a whim, it was a plan, a group chat, a thread I wasn't on, a joke that wasn't a joke, and the person who suggested the exact wording, the person who sent the mock-up, was not Lauren, not Ryan, not even my mother, it was my father, Mark, practical, shrugging, even tempered Mark, and suddenly the whole house tilted, the weight of years sliding to a new corner, and Aunt Claire kept talking, her voice small, I thought they'd chicken out, I thought your mom would stop it, I thought, and I just listened. And then I said thank you, and I closed the door, and sat with the version of my life where the betrayal wasn't a misstep, it was choreography. I drove the long way home that night, the bridge skimming the dark water, the marsh whispering to itself, and I tried on the idea like a dress in a mirror, my father picking the word disgrace, my father laughing before the punchline, my father telling the printer to go darker on the ink. It made a kind of terrible sense, the way he'd always held the approval ledger, doling out credit, withholding interest, the patriarch who liked his women agreeable and his stories simple, golden daughter, lovable son, complicated middle child, and in that mirror I also saw the smaller betrayals I'd excused, the way he'd handed my scholarship letter back without reading, the way he'd diverted conversations when I spoke about work, the way he'd praised my cooking but never my contracts, and I thought, all right then, we're done pretending. But endings are messy, especially when money has been mortar. The requests didn't stop, they just changed shape. Lauren tried contrition on for size, a long text about sisterhood and misunderstandings and the pressure she's under, followed by a short one, could you at least cover the school deposit while we recover? My mother called and cried, not I'm sorry, but how could you do this to us? My father left a voicemail that sounded like a board meeting, emotions aside, what's the path forward? And Ryan, who always keeps a spare match for gasoline, sent me a screenshot of a nasty thread and wrote, see what you did, as if reputational arson weren't his favorite sport. And that night, in my little kitchen, with the lemon tree I keep alive out of stubbornness, I wrote 4 emails, not long, not cruel, just clear. I said I wouldn't be financing their lives anymore, I said the party was a line and they crossed it, I said I loved my nieces and would think about a future that didn't run through their mother's account. I said no more private bailouts, no more family retainer disguised as kindness. I said, for the first time, my love has a boundary, and when I hit send, my hands shook, not from fear, but from the muscle memory of compliance finally breaking, and then I turned off my phone, and I slept. In the morning there was a different kind of knock, an email from a producer with a podcast I admire, come tell the unglamorous truth of building something from zero, and a request from a women's business council, keynote on resilience, and I said yes, not because I wanted a stage to punish my family from, but because I wanted to talk to the girls like me, the ones who are told they're too much until someone needs rent, the ones who apologize for breathing and then pay the bill with a smile. And the first time I said it out loud, on a panel in Miami, into a microphone that made my voice sound braver than I felt, I watched faces soften, shoulders drop, pens start moving, and I thought, this is what I wanted the mansion to be, a room where someone finally sees me, only I didn't need them for it. The backlash shifted in tone, smaller, pettier. An old neighbor sent me a clipped note about loyalty, a cousin I haven't seen in years subtweeted something about modern daughters, and then a rumor surfaced that I'd only succeeded because of a silent partner, and I laughed, out loud, in my office with the door open, because if there had been a silent partner it had been me, underwriting everyone else, and right then my assistant pinged me. A man at reception asking for 5 minutes, says he's family, and the name landed like a stone in a pond, not my father, not Ryan, not a cousin, it was Nathan. Nathan, the boy I dated my first year back in Charleston, the one with the right shoes and the wrong heart, the one my father liked, the one who left when my calendar got crowded and my boundaries got loud, standing in my lobby with flowers and a script I could recite. I heard about the article, I always believed in you, let's talk, and I almost rolled my eyes hard enough to see last week, but I took the meeting, 5 minutes in a glass box, just to test myself, to hear the old music and not dance, and he talked in circles, and I let him, and then I smiled, and I said, we tell the truth here now, and the truth is, you liked me small, and I'm not, and I walked him out, and I felt so light I could have floated down the stairs, and that was the moment, silly as it sounds, when I knew the center had shifted, when I knew I wasn't orbiting the old sun anymore. Savannah kept rippling, consequences falling like dominoes that had been stacked for years. Lauren's brand deals vanished, the carefully curated grid on her phone turned from glossy to quiet, a separation announcement appeared and disappeared, a ring came off, then on, then off again. Ryan drifted from a co-working space to a barback job to selling cars on weekends, hustling, always hustling. My parents put the house on the market and moved into a condo that smelled faintly of someone else's life, and through it all I didn't gloat, I didn't post, I didn't text I told you so, I went to work, I built things, I paid my team well, I learned to make a perfect omelet and a decent apology, the second one, for me, to me. The apology looked like gentleness, like therapy on Thursdays, like saving the voicemails from strangers who said my story made them call their daughters, like walking the Battery at sunrise and letting the wind untie knots I didn't know I had, and because the universe has a sense of humor, because life likes a third-act twist, my mother showed up at one of my keynotes, unannounced, sitting 3 rows back in a jacket I'd never seen, cheeks pale, hair too perfect, and after I spoke, after the line of women with questions and gratitude and fierce eyes, she was still there, a small shape in a large room, and I walked to her, heart thudding like shoes on an old staircase. She started with the tears I predicted, I didn't know, I never meant, your father meant, and I let her talk, and then I asked one question, the one I needed, where were you when they ordered the shirts, and my mother, who used to fix everything with a casserole and a shush, dropped her gaze and said the truest thing I've ever heard from her, I was standing right there, and I didn't stop them, and the air left my lungs, because that's the thing, isn't it, betrayal isn't always the person with the knife, sometimes it's the one who holds the door, and she cried, and I didn't, and we stood there, 2 women who've performed mother and daughter like it's community theater, and I said, I believe you're sorry, and I believe you're scared, and I also believe in consequences, and she nodded like she'd expected a softer landing, and I hugged her anyway, a brief, awkward press of fabric and perfume, a kindness I could afford, and then I left. The magazine called again, this time for a cover, this time with a photographer who said, "Give me your not smile smile, the one you save for yourself," and the issue hit stands the week my company opened a New York office, the same week a scholarship fund we set up for single mothers filled in 48 hours, and the same week my father sent me a letter, real paper, real stamp, his handwriting like a blueprint that never got built. He didn't apologize, not really, he explained, which isn't the same thing, expectations, pressure, generational, you were different, I didn't know how to love different, and I read it 3 times, and I put it in a drawer, not rage, not forgiveness, just storage. On a quiet Sunday, feet on the porch rail, gulls bickering over something that wasn't theirs, I thought about grace, not the performance of it, not the tilted head pity of it, the real thing, the space between what you deserved and what you got, and how sometimes you have to build that space with your own 2 hands, and I realized I'd been doing that all along, I just hadn't moved into it, and when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize, I almost ignored it, but I didn't, and a small voice said, "Aunt Maddie, Mom said it's okay if I call," and the world tilted again, softer this time, my niece, Chloe, breathless, telling me about a school play and a science project and a teacher who said she asks good questions, and I said, "Will you send me pictures?" And she said, "Can you come?" And a new kind of yes bloomed in my chest, not the old, exhausting yes, a future yes, a careful yes, a yes with a spine. Boundaries don't just protect, they shape, they make rooms where there used to be hallways, and I learned to decorate those rooms, to host myself there, to invite in only what didn't leave me emptier, and yet life kept testing the locks. An accountant from my parents' old bank emailed, a polite storm, there were withdrawals, lines blurred between accounts, a history I hadn't asked to see, and there it was, black and white, the way my generosity had become their budget, the way my name appeared like duct tape on leaky pipes, and I felt anger rise, hot and clean, and I let it pass through instead of bottling it, because bottling is how you end up exploding at the wrong people in the wrong rooms. Lauren tried again, this time with humility that didn't feel rehearsed, a coffee at a place with wobbly tables and good pie, her face thinner, her eyes tired, she said the word sorry and it didn't bounce, it landed, she said, "I wanted you small because I felt small," she said, "I made the joke because I was afraid you'd give them the shares and I'd be less," and there it was, the admission at the heart of every sibling Cold War, scarcity dressed as humor, fear wearing lipstick, and I told her the truth, that I loved her girls and I wouldn't punish them for our history, that any help would go through a trust with a trustee who wasn't family, that the pipeline of no questions asked money had been capped, sealed, buried, and she nodded, a woman standing in the rubble of her own choices, and for the first time maybe ever, we talked like equals, not rivals auditioning for our parents' applause. Ryan didn't come around, not then, maybe not ever, he texted once, a link to a job listing with a winky face, as if the old script might get a laugh, as if I might fall back into my mark, and I didn't answer, because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is not rehearse the old lines, and I focused on the things that grew when you looked away from the noise, a mentorship program that paired first-gen college women with event pros, a vendor pay-early initiative that changed the way small florists slept, a habit of eating dinner at my table instead of my desk, wild, I know. Then, because stories like mine love symmetry, Savannah called me back, a client who owned that very mansion, the Room of the Shirts, wanted a 3-day cultural festival for the city, something generous, something grand, and I stood in that ballroom again, in daylight this time, the ghosts less loud, and I touched the paneling and said, "Let's rewrite the scene," and we did, we filled it with artists and school kids and elders in their Sunday best, with jazz that made your ribs hum and gumbo that made you believe in God, and I gave the opening remarks with my voice steady and my knees only a little traitorous, and afterward, a woman in her 70s grabbed my hand and said, "Baby, you took your pain and made it useful," and I thought, yes, that's the work, isn't it, usefulness, not revenge, not performance, usefulness. That night, in my hotel, the same view, a different woman, I opened my laptop and wrote the first pages of a book I'd been avoiding, not a takedown, a roadmap, how to build without blood money, how to love without losing yourself, how to say no without apology, and as the cursor blinked like a tiny metronome keeping time with my heart, My phone lit up with a photo, Chloe in a lab coat made of paper, holding a ribbon, her grin crooked and perfect, and beneath it, 3 words from a number saved. As Lauren, we're trying, and for once, I believed her. 2 years is both a blink and a lifetime. Southern Grace crossed markets. I used to write on vision boards, New York, Miami, a pop-up in Austin that sold out in an hour. The scholarship fund sent 20 single moms back to school, and the memoir, the one I wrote in hotel rooms and Dawn kitchens, found a publisher that didn't want me to sweeten anything. And when the National Women's Business Council handed me a silver award under chandeliers that didn't scare me anymore, I didn't think of my family first. I thought of 12-year-old me holding a trophy in a quiet kitchen, and I said into the mic, for the girls who think they have to buy love, you don't. And the room was a sea of shining eyes, and I felt the old ache bow, not vanish, bow, to something bigger. My parents live smaller now, I hear, a condo near a park. My mother takes long walks and has started painting tiny boats on tiny canvases. My father volunteers at a community center, fixing things that are simple to fix. He mailed another letter last Christmas, shorter, less like minutes, more like a man. He said he was proud of the business. He said he was sorry he didn't say that when it mattered. He didn't ask for money, he didn't ask for anything, and I didn't send a check, I sent a framed photo of me and Chloe at her school play, both of us laughing, our heads thrown back. We looked like 2 people who knew the same joke, and maybe we did. That joy is louder when it's chosen. Lauren works part-time. She texts occasionally without agenda, sometimes a recipe, sometimes a question that isn't a trap, and we're cautious, we're honest, we bring our own forks to the picnic and we're okay with that. Ryan is a rumor, then a voicemail, then a rumor again, and I wish him steadiness. I wish him a room of his own to sit in and listen to the quiet. I wish him the kind of no that turns into a better yes later. And I don't spend my days wishing. That's the difference. Blessings don't have to be assignments. As for me, I bought a small house by the water with a creaky swing and a stubborn rose bush that loves me back. I host dinners with candles that drip on purpose. I keep a drawer full of letters from strangers who turned their lives a few degrees after hearing mine, and the leather folder I carried to Savannah sits on a shelf, empty, a relic of a version of love I don't practice anymore. And sometimes, late, when the marsh sings its old song, I take it down, I run a hand over the seam, and I whisper a thank you, not to them, to me, for the moment I didn't flinch, for the doorway I walked through, for the night I chose myself. People ask if I regret tearing up the papers, if I'd do it differently now that the dust has settled and the chorus has thinned, and here's the truth, the only one that matters. I don't regret the confetti, I regret waiting so long to make it snow, because the minute those scraps hit linen, a storm cleared, and when it passed, there I was, standing in the light I'd been setting up for everyone else, warm, steady, mine. And if you're listening and your hands are shaking and your throat is tight, and the people you love call you a disgrace when what they mean is inconvenient, hear me, you don't have to prove a thing, you don't have to fund your own erasure, you get to choose the room, the table, the name on the door, and when you do, the right ones will find you, and the wrong ones will fall away like old paint in the rain, and you will breathe, finally, fully, freely, the way you were always meant to, the way I do now.